You deleted the app 3 days ago. You were proud of yourself. And yet, right now, your thumb just swiped up and to the left, unlocking your phone and landing precisely where that app's icon used to sit. There's nothing there. Just an empty square of home screen. You stare at it, confused, almost betrayed. Why did your own hand do that without asking you? You'd assume willpower is the whole story here. Delete the temptation, and the urge should disappear with it. But the real answer is far stranger. The urge was never coming from the app. It was coming from you, and is still there, waiting in a place deleting an icon can't reach. Start with what a habit actually is, biologically. Neuroscientist Anne Graybiel at MIT spent decades studying a part of your brain called the basal ganglia, tracking how repeated behaviors get compressed into something she calls a chunk. Early on, checking your phone required real decisions. But after enough repetitions, your brain bundles the entire sequence, the reach, the unlock, the swipe, into a single automatic unit, filed away like a reflex. Graybiel's research on animals showed this chunking happening at the level of individual brain cells, activity firing in a burst at the start and end of a learned routine, with almost nothing in between. The habit isn't a series of choices anymore. It's one motion, sealed shut. Think about how specific this cue-response link actually is. It isn't triggered by a general feeling of wanting entertainment. It's triggered by a narrow, almost mechanical combination. This exact chair, this exact moment after finishing a task, this exact small dip in stimulation. Change any one piece of that combination, and the urge often weakens, which tells you something important. The craving was never really about the content waiting on the other side. It was about completing a sequence your body had already rehearsed so many times that stopping partway feels almost physically wrong. There's a twist in Graybiel's later research that makes this even stranger. She found that even when the outcome of a habit becomes unpleasant, animals trained under her lab's conditions would sometimes still perform the sequence anyway, because the chunk had become somewhat independent of its original purpose. The behavior wasn't being evaluated fresh each time. It was simply running, the way a song you've memorized keeps playing in your head, whether or not you still like it. A habit can outlive both its reward and your own conscious approval of it, coasting on nothing but repetition. Here's the part that should unsettle you. Once a habit is chunked, the reward at the end becomes almost irrelevant to whether it fires. Researcher Wendy Wood, who has spent her career studying how habits form and persist, found that habits are triggered by context, not by desire. Triggered by a location, a time of day, a feeling, a posture. Sitting on the couch, waiting for a kettle to boil, feeling a small dip in attention. These are the actual switches. The content on the other side of the swipe was only ever the excuse your brain used to justify a motion it was already going to make. This explains something eerie. When you deleted the app, you removed the reward. You did not remove the cue. The couch is still the couch. The boredom still arrives on schedule. Every trigger that used to fire the habit is still fully intact in your environment and your body, which means your hand still receives the signal to move, even though the target no longer exists. There's a twist that makes this even harder to escape through willpower alone. When a habit that used to deliver a reward suddenly stops delivering one, behavior doesn't quietly fade. It spikes first. This pattern shows up across decades of research into learned behavior in humans and animals alike. Right after a reward disappears, the behavior tied to it temporarily intensifies, as if the system is trying harder before it gives up. The days right after you delete an app are not the easiest days. They are, neurologically, some of the hardest, because your brain hasn't yet updated its model of the world. There's a reason this system evolved to work this way rather than staying flexible and deliberate forever. Deliberation is expensive. Every time your ancestors had to consciously weigh a decision, they burned attention that could have gone toward spotting a predator or finding food. A brain that automated its safest, most repeated behaviors freed up mental bandwidth for genuine novelty. Chunking wasn't a bug. It was the entire point, a trade of flexibility for speed. Psychiatrist Judson Brewer, who studies the neuroscience of craving and habit change, found something that adds another layer. Using brain imaging, he showed that the craving to check, scroll, or repeat a habitual behavior activates in a very physical way, closer to a bodily sensation than a thought, a tightening, a restlessness, an itch with no exact location. Brewer's research suggests that trying to white-knuckle through this feeling with pure willpower often backfires, because willpower is a limited, effortful resource, while the craving itself is automatic and nearly effortless to produce. The trouble is that this same efficient machinery doesn't know the difference between checking on a fire that keeps you alive and checking a phone that keeps you distracted. Both get compressed into the same kind of automatic unit if repeated often enough, and once compressed, both fire off the same cues, regardless of what's actually waiting on the other end. This is why deleting the app so often fails as a complete solution. You change the outcome. You didn't touch the trigger, and you didn't touch the deeply grooved motor pattern sitting underneath it. Your thumb has practiced this exact movement thousands of times. It doesn't check first whether the reward still exists before attempting the reach. There's something almost freeing in understanding this. If the urge isn't a personal failing, if it's a chunked motor pattern responding to an intact cue, the fix was never going to be about being a stronger person. Wood's research points to something more useful. Change the cue, not just the reward. Sit somewhere different than the couch where the habit lived. Interrupt the exact context that used to trigger the reach, and the automatic loop has far less to latch onto. Brewer's work suggests something that runs almost opposite to willpower. Instead of fighting the craving with force, simply notice it with curiosity the moment it arrives. Where exactly does it sit in your body? How long does it actually last if you don't act on it? Most cravings, studied closely, turn out to be shorter than they feel in the moment your hand is already halfway to your pocket. This reframes the whole experience of relapsing into a deleted habit. Reinstalling the app after 3 clean days doesn't mean your character collapsed. It means an old, efficient, deeply rehearsed system found its familiar cue again and did exactly what it was built millions of small repetitions ago to do: complete the loop with the least possible friction. That doesn't excuse the behavior, but it aims the blame at the right target. A stubborn piece of neural architecture, not a weak will. None of this means the urge will vanish overnight. Old chunked patterns don't get erased so much as overwritten, slowly, by new ones built through repetition in the same triggering contexts. Which is why the empty square on your home screen keeps getting tapped for a while. The behavior was never really about the app. The app was only ever the last stop on a route your brain had already memorized, a route it will keep trying to walk, out of habit, until you give it a new destination, worth learning, instead. So the next time your thumb reaches for an app that isn't there anymore, remember what's actually happening underneath. It isn't proof that you failed, And it isn't proof that the app had some special hold on you. It's a well-worn groove in a very old, very efficient machine, still following the map it built long before you decided to delete anything at all.